Good morning and welcome to the garden. I'm glad you're here with us today. I owe a special thanks and a word of appreciation to Nancy Lafferty and to Dana Cochran-Wiley. Filled in for me the last 2 weeks, and I've heard from a number of you about what a great job they both did. So I'm not sure either one is present at this service, but they still deserve a round of applause. It's really great to have such capable, talented people who are willing to share of themselves and allow me to get a little respite and a little break too. So it's really great having folks like that who are so willing to take time out of the rest of their lives and share with all of us. Speaking of taking time out of the rest of our lives, I cannot believe that it's this time of the year. It seems like summer just started with that kind of free-flowing schedule and a little more relaxed, and all of a sudden, bing, here we are at the start of school again. In fact, some kids have already started, and some are going to start and very quickly. And so you know what that means. That means that household schedules, those with children in them, have started to change already. Bedtime has to be altered, meals have to be planned differently, school supplies have to be readied, and all of those activities, all the things that go together to make an effective and successful school year have to be underway now to make sure it all comes together the way everybody wants it to. You know, every once in a while I'll talk to someone who appears to be at the end of their learning cycle, at least their formal learning cycle, whether that's high school or college or post-grad or whatever it might be. And they'll say something like, "I'll be so glad when this is over. I don't ever have to do this again." And I want to say to them, oh, you don't know how wrong you really are. It's only just starting. There are lots of reasons for that. I mean, life itself is a learning experience, and there's so much to gain and so much wisdom and understanding and expansion to go through in the course of our lives. But the world is changing at such an incredible pace these days that we have to do some learning just to stay even with where we've been. And that doesn't even include gaining new knowledge, new skills, new abilities, experiencing new things that really help us grow and expand even a little bit more. The reality is learning is a lifelong process, whether we like that or not. Now, I read an article about an 84-year-old grandfather who won a prize from in 2010 from the National Learners Week, I think is what it's called. And he was talking about all the things he'd learned, especially over the last 10 years. He said he'd done everything, studied everything from gardening to the 1688 Glorious Rebellion, whatever that was. I didn't look that up. I suppose that was an opportunity for learning that I missed. At any rate, he said he had done that, but that hasn't always been the case in his life because he grew up in poverty, and his teachers were ones that he described as bully types, and so he abandoned learning early on in his life. And then there was this 2-year-old granddaughter who did like every child I know does, and that is ask a million questions. And she got really frustrated with her grandfather when he couldn't answer her questions. She said, "Grandpa, don't you know anything?" Well, that was the prompt he needed. And he began to learn. And so now, even 10 years later, as she asked questions, he said, "I'm glad you've asked that question. Let's see what we can find out." Now, I can really understand and can relate to that situation because all I can tell you is I have learned more about dinosaurs and hummingbirds over the last, and lots more stuff, over the last 4 or 5 years than I could ever have imagined, and in some cases ever wanted to know. But, you know, it's that childlike curiosity that keeps asking the questions, and when we don't know the answers, what we've done is start Googling things and try to figure it out, and hopefully it helps her learn. But I'll tell you what, I'm learning in the process too. It's really a good exercise. Well, learning at all ages and stages of life is really what our Bible passage is about for today. Now, it's out of the book of Proverbs, which we've talked about before, and we'll talk about a little bit more after we look at it. But it's a collection of the wisdom teachings, these gems of wisdom that the wise people of that society put together over several generations. So let's look at it, and then we'll process it a little bit more. These are the wise sayings of Solomon, David's son, Israel's king, written down so we'll know how to live well and right, to understand what life means and where it's going. A manual for living, for learning what's right and just and fair, to teach the inexperienced the ropes and give our young people a grasp on reality. There's something here also for seasoned men. I like that. Seasoned men and women. Still a thing or two for the experienced to learn. Fresh wisdom to probe and penetrate the rhymes and reasons of wise men and women. Now, this is the very beginning of Proverbs, just as that book of Proverbs opens. And one of the things that scholars are certain about is that it is not a collection of writings by Solomon the king, that it is that collection of wisdom. Maybe it was presented initially into the court of Solomon, but he was not the one who developed those, who learned those, who taught those, and who collected those, that it was indeed the wisdom writers. And the part I want us to really focus on today was really the last 4 verses that talk about those of us who are seasoned here. There's something here also for seasoned men and women, still a thing or two for the experienced to learn, fresh wisdom to probe and penetrate the rhymes and reasons of wise men and women. That's really what I want us to think about, because that speaks to the fact that life itself is the greatest teacher, and learning is a lifelong prospect. It's something we're all involved in. And what I've discovered over the years is that learning is what keeps us healthy and happy and alive and vital. I read a book, it's probably 15 years ago now, entitled Aging Well. And it was really had the summary of results of a study that had taken place over a 50-year time period. And that's exactly what was discovered, is that continuing to learn and develop through our whole life long is what ages us well. It's what helps us move through this life in the best way possible. In fact, that lifelong learning was referred to as a health club for the brain. And that's an important thing to think about. It's really vital. Henry Ford talked about the very thing. He said, anyone who stops learning is old, whether at 20 or 80. Anyone who keeps learning stays young. The greatest thing in life is to keep your mind young. Well, one article I read said there are basically, in general, 3 different types of learning. One would be considered what was called maintenance learning. In other words, it's just doing enough to stay even, to keep up, to keep as current as we possibly can. That's the first one. The second one is referred to as growth learning, and that's when we acquire new skills, new abilities, we gain new knowledge, or we experience new things that helps us expand a little bit and become a little broader in terms of our intellect and our mind and body and spirit. And then the third one is what's called shock learning, and it occurs when what we thought we knew is contradicted or totally reversed into something totally different. That really pushes buttons for us, and we have to totally reconsider what we had believed and to think in whole new ways. And that's what leads to creativity and innovation, and that's a good kind of thing. My guess is if we would look back over our lives, we would all be able to name various instances of all 3 types, because that's really what we experience. Now, Wikipedia says that lifelong learning comes as a result of ongoing, involuntary, and self-motivated pursuit of knowledge. Hopefully, that pursuit of knowledge is something that is embedded in us at a very early age. Just as I've said, every child I know is filled with curiosity. They have a million questions, and they're trying to learn and grow, and it starts from day one as they begin to try to figure out what the world is about and what life is about. And it's important, I think, that we understand that the role of education and the job of teachers is really all about keeping that curiosity and that love of learning alive. Socrates said, "Education is the kindling of a flame, not the filling of a vessel." I wish I'd understood that when I was a student in that formal learning process in the early years, because I kind of thought for a long time that education was about pouring stuff in that I could pour back out and spew back out. And it took a long time for me to begin to really try to learn to integrate things into my life and to see ties between things. And I think that's really something for us all to remember and to think about. Well, hopefully for each of us now, wherever we are in life, that flame of the desire for learning and growing and evolving and changing has been lit within us, and we're keeping it lit. And I want to be sure you understand, I'm not just talking about head stuff. I'm talking about heart stuff, about life and love and relationships. And I'm talking about faith stuff. like our spiritual lives, because nothing stays the same. We always grow and evolve and change and develop, and so it's important to acknowledge that and to allow that, because that's what helps us through life. That enriches our lives and helps us live more deeply. It challenges us and stimulates us and expands our horizons. We become more open and more flexible as we begin to experience more and understand more what's going on. And it helps us develop some of our natural abilities, our base of knowledge and understanding. It just enhances our lives in ways that would be almost impossible to explain or understand. Now, being willing to continue to learn and grow and develop and evolve is an important characteristic. In fact, I read that over the next decade, 75% of our current workforce will have to be significantly retrained in order to even stay even and begin to function at all in this world. Alvin Toffler said this: "The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn." Well, that's something for us all to think about wherever we happen to be on the scheme of life. Now, given that this lifelong learning is a process that we're all engaged in, whether we're aware of it or not, how do we go about doing that? What are some ideas? Well, I saw a list of suggestions, and so I'm just going to share the 3 or 4 that I liked. I'm sure the list is endless, so there's any number of ways that we can do that. But one of the first things that was mentioned is the importance of always having a book with us. Either a book, paperback, hardback, electronic reader, whatever it is, but to always have a book with us and to be reading. Now, I know not everybody loves reading, and maybe some prefer trashy novels. I'm not sure how much that helps, but I would think that we've really got to train ourselves to learn more, to read more, to study more, because it expands our horizons. It helps us experience things and think about things that we may never have considered before. So that was one of the suggestions, is that we really nurture our ability to read and stay up with things and learn new things and to grow in that process. Another suggestion was to make a to-learn list. What do we want to learn about life, about this experience or that one, or this topic or that one, and how do we go about doing that? And what are the things we are really curious about that maybe we've never explored? What can we learn about? What can we do? Yet another idea was something that's pretty common that we find in every community, I think, and that's the opportunity to take classes, to be with other people who bring other perspectives and other ideas and who might challenge us or stimulate our thinking in a whole new way. So that's helpful. And you can study virtually anything you want to study, from auto mechanics to gardening to flower arranging to, oh gosh, the list is endless of the things that we can learn in a class kind of situation. And then there's another idea that I think, at least from my own experience, really warrants looking at, and that is trying to share our knowledge, whatever we've learned, whatever we've experienced. How do we share that and help others begin to learn and experience that kind of thing? And we do that by becoming teachers ourselves, wherever we happen to be along this gamut. It is the kind of thing that I've discovered that in order to teach others or try to inspire others, we have to know what we're talking about and try to know as thoroughly as we possibly can, and to share that in a concise way that inspires others and encourages them to learn to know more. So we do have a responsibility in this. There's something else we need to be aware of, is that we all learn differently. There are no two of us that's exactly alike, because there are various ways we go about learning. Some are experiential, who really have to get their hands dirty and really be in there and do whatever it is they're trying to learn and experience anew. Other people are very visual learners. They have to see something in order for it to make sense and to help them learn. And yet others are auditory. It is in listening that they really gain the greatest benefit. And probably a lot of us are combinations of all those, maybe stronger in some areas than others. So if we're talking about learning and being a lifelong learner, we need to understand how we do gain wisdom and knowledge and life experiences, and what the best way is for us. You know, that's all important. Most important thing is to be intentional about living life as a learner all the way through. But the question is, who's responsible? And we are responsible. We are the ones who have to take the first step, and we have to commit ourselves to learning. So let me ask you, what do you say? What are we going to learn today?